Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 187 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. So in this episode, we're going to bring on Bruce Thom from Bat Machine. They have a new receiver that they released this year called the Hammerhead. They keep innovating and upping the game. It is going to be a world-class hunting rifle, and it's going to make a world-class competition rifle. So a lot of little cool details, little changes, and a 75-degree bolt throw, which for those that like to shoot stuff fast is a really big deal. So without further ado, this ought to be a great podcast. Here we go. So before we get started, I do want to say thank you to MDT. MDT's maker of fine rifle chassis. They make them for a lot of different makes and models. The big thing if you want to upgrade your game and if you want to shoot beyond 700 yards, I say this all the time, is you have to find a rifle stock that fits you well. And beyond 700 yards, it really does have to fit you perfectly. You have to be 100% comfortable behind the rifle. Stocks aren't one size fits all. You can have 4 or 5 different people get on the same stock. 2 love it, 2 are okay with it, and 1 actually hates it. And it has nothing to do with the stock. It's just how they shoot it. How does it feel? Where's their face? There's just these little details. And one of the nice things about MDT is they make a lot of different options for their chassis. So from hunting to straight up competition, they cover a huge range of different models, from the Oryx up to the ACC Elite. So if you want to learn more, or if you want to upgrade your rifle by upgrading your stock, stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com. We'd also like to thank Krieger Barrels, maker of cut rifle barrels. They're a family-owned and operated business out of the great state of Wisconsin, and they have a new program called Krieger Direct where you can log on, order your barrel, and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you want the best and need it now, stop over to KriegerBarrels.com. That's KriegerBarrels.com today. So this podcast is going to take a little bit longer than our normal 30-minute podcast. It's not excessively long, but I don't want to waste a lot of time going over and talking about things leading up to it. So without further ado, let's dive straight into our interview with Bruce Thom, president of Bat Machine Company. So we'd like to welcome back Bruce Thom from Bat Machine. Bruce has come out with another action this year and it's been working on it for a little while. And I know we're going to do a video review on it soon, but I wanted to take the time to invite Bruce onto the podcast, talk a little bit about it, the history, what's all changed on it. So Bruce, thank you so much for taking the time to join us again on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And you're welcome.
The new action that you just received is quite different for you guys for the Remington 700 clone world, and it's called the Hammerhead. For those that don't know much about it, outside of a lot of your receivers that you're seeing on the marketplace, a lot of them are 700 clone-ish, so they'll fit in a lot of aftermarket receivers. This one's quite different and quite a variant from what you've done in the past, which is sort of pretty exciting. So what can you tell us about the Hammerhead that's a little bit different, and then maybe some of the processes that led you down the road to even design it?
I would say the Hammerhead started development in our heads anyway, not too long after the TR was introduced, which is quite a long time ago. Just little things that the customer feedback and application of the original TR was designed for. As guys used it, they get ideas and see things that they would like different. Last year, we got serious about doing a full redesign on it. And in one of the things that happened that's kind of one of the major things about it is Unknown Munitions, who we do a lot of hunting actions for, asked us about a 70-degree bolt throw or bolt lift. Initially, I was like, yeah, you're crazy. That's not going to work out too well. But we decided to go ahead and lay it out on the CAD and see what we could, what lug contact looked like and stuff like that. So once we determined that we could get full lug contact with a 75-degree throw instead of 70, we decided to go ahead and build a prototype. I was very impressed with the difference in the feel of the action between a 90 and a 75. I actually just made a prototype bolt and shot at my standard TR and did back-to-back strings of 10-shot groups with the 75 bolt throw versus this 90-degree bolt throw. I was really pleasantly surprised by it was a huge difference in how the action feels and cycles. It feels a lot slicker.
Yeah.
As far as the operating cycle. Once I determined that, I did like it and I did think it was beneficial, we went ahead with the rest of the little things that we have been wanting to do. One of those is creating a bolt stop that would allow us to do 2 positions. A lot of guys like to shoot the BR-based cases, and there's really no reason to have that extra 400 thousandths of bolt stroke.
Right.
So we made the bolt stop designs to where we could accommodate regular full-length bolt stop travel and then a shorter bolt stop travel for the BR series cases. With that, we also changed our bolt stop pin location to the top of the receiver, enabling the shooter to change it without taking the thing out of the stock if that's an issue. The other things that were changed was the way the feed ramp design changed a bit to help with the shorter cases, picking up out of the double stack magazines.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue with the single stack magazines on all of the cuts designed for that double stack style magazine is that when you use a single stack magazine in those, the rear towards the tang end of the magazine can be shoved up into the bolt. There's nothing stopping it because it's narrower and doesn't hit the sides of the magazine port on the bottom of the action.
Mm-hmm.
So we created a little detail there. Currently, it's a special shaped screw that goes in there that has a head that hits on the bottom or the top back edge of the magazine to keep it from being shoved into the bolt. We made it as a screw right now so that you could actually maybe put a shim under it if you wanted to change that height a little bit. Eventually, we may just make it, if guys aren't really needing that feature, we'll just machine the feature in there at the height that we've had determined that works well for the majority of actions or stock combos, magazine combos.
So there's a couple things to touch base on. Now, I have one of the receivers here that I got. We got 5 of them, and going over them, we're going to do a video review so we can sort of show all this that Bruce is talking about. The first part is the 75-degree bolt throw. I know we've talked about this many years ago, from going from 3-lug and having that shorter bolt throw, and in magazine-fed rifles sometimes how hard they are to lift, and there's just a lot to get one to run super smooth that's functional, right? So what surprised you the best about it? Because I know when we talked about it in the past, this was sort of like a dragging point, like, we've tried it in the past. And so what surprised you the most about it? Like when you did it, do you think it was going to the 75 degrees?
One of the reasons 2 reasons I was resistant to do it. One is lug contact in the front. And 2, anytime you reduce the bolt lift, you increase the helix on the cocking cam on the back of the bolt, which means your opening force increases.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to modify our closing cams in the front of the action and change the extraction cam in the back as well to where we optimized optimized both the closing cams and opening cams to where we could get a little more area up front on the lug area so that we could maintain that 100% contact on the lugs. So that was the first thing that was really important to me. The second thing, the cocking cam. So there's really no way to get around that as far as, it's what it is. You got to cock the thing when you open it. On that end, we started experimenting with what we could get away with lighter springs and different pitch coil springs to achieve an equivalent or better bolt lift feel than a standard 90 degree. And was able to achieve that. And as well, as part of that experimentation, it was shooting same rifle, same barrel, and just swapping bolts with different firing pin assemblies and testing against known standard 90 degree bolt lift firing pin assembly that we currently use in the TR and VR series actions. Yeah, at the end of the day, I actually had a smaller 10-shot eggs with the 75 degree bolt and a lighter spring setup than I did with the 90-degree standard setup. So, and I mean, it was a very small difference, but there's enough variables there that you can't just say, oh, the 75 degrees is 100% better. But it definitely was not worse. That made me happy that we were, and same time as shooting over chronograph, not just shooting for group. So you see what your SDs are and extreme spreads. So then it all was really, really good. So those were my two main objections to doing it originally. After we overcame those things, I was happy to go ahead and continue with the rest of the redesign on the action, the bolt stop and the magazine stuff. And then we changed the OD look, the outside shape, just a little more modern. And
if you look at things in detail, right, and we got this one here, when you open that bolt up and you look at the back of the receiver, and we're going to do a video on this where the cocks over, you can see that's different. Like you can see that there was a lot of thought, and it looks like even taking into consideration a little bit more of an angle or a sweep.
Yeah, part of that whole cocking piece and the bolt opening and the bolt closing, we spent a lot of time optimizing that. You don't get any cock on close feel, and you're not, cocking the firing pin, the firing pin even more as you close the bolt. There was a lot of conscious design dimensions in that area to optimize that.
What Bruce is talking about is to get a shorter bolt throw, sometimes you sacrifice a harder, stiffer lift, and you might not get the action because you don't have the lug contact because you're not rolling the bolt down as far. And the fact that you were able to get an action that actually functions as nicely, if not even nicer, with a shorter throw. That's sort of like a win-win for those that know.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. We've been doing this for a long time, but with going with the 75-degree throw, it just gave us an opportunity to totally re-go through all of our dimensions and all of our cam angles and everything, and just like, okay, we're just going to optimize all of this to make it as best it can be. So one thing that's changed over the years, back when we started building bench rest actions, basically the only trigger that was worth a hoot was a jewel. Although the trigger pull was exceptional and still is. At that time, there was a lot of variation in sear location on the trigger itself, and so it was really hard to come up with a dimension on our sear in the action to optimize that feel of when you close it, of not having any cock on close. It's one of the reasons that on the TR and most of our bench rest actions, you have a trigger bracket that has different 10th increment positions you can put it in depending on which way you turn it and which way you put the trigger in. Better manufacturing techniques, etc. With the Bix and Andy, their triggers, there really is no variation in that position, and even the trigger techs are very good for maintaining that position on the trigger. It's allowed us to make a better closing action because the trigger manufacturers have settled on a dimension that they're actually repeating as they make their triggers.
Yeah, because you're vulnerable to that. You're vulnerable to everybody and their brother changing stuff up, and then everybody has their own idea of what's the best trigger, and then you're vulnerable to 35 different things being stuck into your receiver.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a double stack, but it can use single stack magazines.
Correct.
And that actually is one of my pet peeves. I love single stack magazines and I love double stack magazines, but it's hard to get a receiver that actually runs both.
So that's the other thing that we've got a fellow that agreed to shoot early on, Orson Piper from out west here. He agreed to start shooting some of the early prototypes. And one thing we learned from him that I'm just kind of, I don't know, ornery, I guess you'd say, is a lot of these PRS NRL guys, they, in their awkward shooting positions, they rest the gun on the magazine.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that's just like a no-no to me. I just like, well, that's stupid. Don't do that because it's just going to cause you feeding issues. Well, he's like, we have to. It's the only way you can gain stability in some of the, scenarios they put you in. Mm-hmm. And we made a big effort as far as the dimensions in that area to make sure that it feeds when you are doing weird stuff to the magazine, pushing on it from the forward, using as a barrier stop, instead of actually using something else in the stock for a stop, you're actually pushing up against the magazine, resting on the magazine on a rock or whatever. We put a lot of effort into optimizing dimensions, feed ramp, and of course, like I mentioned, that rear stop to keep the magazine from getting shoved up into the bottom of the bolt on the single stack.
And it doesn't sound like a big deal to the shooters that shoot and hunt competition. They're all familiar with this. But to the hunters, where they get in trouble is they do exactly what you said. They don't think about it. They throw their rifle up on their pack or up on a log, and it's on the magazine. And if they're not used to doing that, and then all of a sudden now they've got these things coming out and they got trouble, they're like, what just happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, it so much trouble on a single stack that, you literally can't close the bolt.
That's right. And their head isn't thinking, pick the gun up and move it to get it off the magazine. It's still setting on the magazine while they're trying to fight it.
Yeah, and it obviously in a hunting situation, competition situation, whatever, your nerves are up a little bit, and some of those you just don't occur to you to look at that. You're concentrated on what you're trying to take down. So, like I say, we were never really gave it a lot of credit to people's feedback in that area, but once we started talking with Course, then he's like, yeah, you have to make this work.
Yeah. There are some benefits to the hunters for this as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
The other thing I want to ask you, and I'm going to, like I said, do a complete video review on this and really try to highlight some of the areas, because right before I brought and hit the record button to start talking to Bruce, we were talking a little bit just to catch up and say hi. And I said about the chamfering on, like, if you look over the action in detail, I love when people always look at actions from like 3 feet, 5 feet, whatever, and they run the bolt, but nobody ever really picks it up and looks at it really closely, right? And I said to Bruce, the chamfering where the action screws are at, like, that's not something you see. I was looking at like the detail, like, oh my God, like you could really tell you guys spent a ton of time just thinking of everything. And then you had said something that was pretty important. You said how important it is to chamfer that area, especially if you're setting on pillars and such.
Yeah, because when you tighten a screw, you are pulling on the threads, and if you have no chamfer, you risk like pulling a little burr or whatever out the bottom of the hole. But you do just actually physically distort. It's steel; you don't think you move it, but you do. You distort, but the threads are being distorted down towards the surface they're tightening on. So if you have no chamfer there, what you end up with is a small contact patch where the threads are pulling onto the flat area of your pillar or bedding surface. So by chamfering it, you allow the load to get spread out to the surrounding mating areas. Obviously, some areas are just too time consuming to machine chamfers on, but wherever we can, we try and machine chamfers on. Just it makes a better looking part, and actually save this time and when they go through deburr and polish. So.
Yeah, and most people would never see it because it's buried in the receiver or it's buried in the stock, sort of out of sight, out of mind. The other thing you touched base on, too, is taking the time to put in 2 separate bolt stops. Wasted motions, wasted time. I don't know if anybody's really doing much with that, but to shoot the shorter cartridges, pretty nice. Especially for 6 Dasher, 6 BR, all those cartridges.
Yeah, we've been pushed by several people to do that, and it seems like such a small thing, but as Corson has been shooting these, he shot 3 or 4 matches now, and I think he shot 4 matches, and he's done second place, first place, and first place at the other one, and then he managed one of the big ones he went to. I can't remember. He finished the one day. He finished up in the, I don't know if he won it or was in the top 3 or something. And then the other day, it was the day he flew in, and he was all kind of out of sorts, but he still finished up near the top. He wasn't real thrilled actually about shooting this action this season, because he's like, I've got so much familiarity with my previous action brand that he said, I've got them all tweaked how I want them to run and everything. But he went ahead and started shooting these, and he just like, I can shoot. They're so much smoother. He said he's shooting the short cartridges. Said the short bolt stop, come out the short bolt throw. He said, I don't have to move my hand. He says, I can just do it all with my wrist. Nice. And he said, it's making a difference. He said, I can stay in position better. And he said, I'm shooting faster. You don't think it's so important maybe to shoot fast when you got time stages every little bit that you can speed that up. Makes it just, I don't know, allows you to spend more time concentrating on actually solid positions and dope in the wind and et cetera, and allows you just to not be panicking so much to cycle your bolt and get things down range.
Yeah, any wasted motion is wasted time, and it's just for no reason. So when I got them here and I seen the two bolt stops in there, I was like, oh, that's too funny. And you ship them with both bolt stops. It's not an add-on later on. They actually come with it.
Yeah, currently. Okay. Currently, yes.
Another question I want to ask you, just a couple of things. On the contact, a lot of people I don't think really understand the value of this. And I think this is where you guys really shine. Like, there's few people that actually can pull it off. But it's having contact on both lugs when you're working the bolt and firing it. And even like 17, 18 years ago, I think in 2006 or 7, we got one of the first bench rest ones. And when we were building rifles here, sort of new. And just running the rifle for the year and looking at the back of those lugs and seeing both lugs in full contact, that is not normal, but that is really a big deal to accuracy. Can you dive into more in detail? Because most people don't even know what kind of contact they're getting into the receiver when they even buy it, and why it would be so important.
Well, it just reduces the, I don't know what you want to say, having both lugs in contact before the cartridge goes off just means that you have less parts slapping around causing random vibrations.
Yeah.
Because both lugs are going to touch as soon as the pressure starts to build on any action.
Mm-hmm.
But having both lugs touch before it ignites just means you're going to have less vibration in the whole overall system as the bullet's traveling down the barrel. And the only real way to achieve that is by having a good bolt fit. So it's our bench rest actions have always had like 1,000 clearance on the bolt body, so it just doesn't allow the bolt to tip up.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the hunting and PRS, NRL, like the TR and the VR and this Hammerhead, they all have more clearance. We're running a 2.5 to 3 thou clearance is what we're running on those for total clearance. So 1.5 thou per side maximum. That's
still crazy, because for people that don't know, you can have a custom receiver out there with 3 to 5 to 7 thousandths per side.
Mm-hmm.
7 to 10 thousandths isn't out of the norm. And you're saying, loosen them up, but that's where the accuracy is. To hold those types of tolerances, it's got to be crazy for the machining, for the setup, for the whole process. But that's where you got your feet wet. You started in the bench rest world for the accuracy part and have been able to you're not new to building receivers, and you're not sort of doing best practices of just copying what everybody else is doing. You guys were born into it out of that excessive amount of accuracy that was needed to win.
Yeah, we kind of rule the bench rest world and have for 20 years or more.
Yeah. And this is why. I mean, explain to people how hard it is to hold those types of tolerances against the norm, because I don't even know how you do it, honestly. And then to be able to take that bolt out and put it in another receiver and it be the same. That is almost like aerospace type machining.
Oh, it's better than aerospace. Aerospace is pretty sloppy machine if you actually get into it. It's old tool maker machining is what it is. But it's not. I guess maybe it'd be difficult for some people, but we've been doing it for so long that it's not really a big deal. But it is. It all starts with the foundation. It starts with the way you set up the part, the way your machine processes that enable you to hold that day in, day out for years on end. And then obviously it takes decent equipment, but it doesn't take like rocket science equipment.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is just employees that care. My guys that are doing, cutting the dimensions that are important to hold the headspace and all that stuff and the squareness year after year. They've been with me forever. Like, I think my guy in the lathe department's been with me since 1999.
Wow.
So
That is awesome. You must be a good guy to work for to have good people stick around that long. That's hard to do, actually. And finding good people is actually
I don't
hard.
know about that.
What do you think about the trigger hanger? One of the things I'd love to not see when it got here was I was like, please no trigger hanger. Please no trigger hanger.
We've always kind of, with the bench rest side, we've always been like, okay, trigger hangers are important because, and part of the reason trigger hangers are important in bench rest actions is the majority of them are glued into the stock. So if you need to work on your trigger or you need to remove it for cleaning and it's glued into the stock, you can't get it out unless you have an action as a trigger hanger that you can, access the screws from the bottom of the stock.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always kind of been a little bit, when you want to say partial to using trigger hangers, and we did so on the TR with the thought that it would make it easier and quicker for a competitor to swap out a trigger if he needed to. However, what we have discovered is most of the chassis systems do not have the access to allow you to do so. And of course, they're not using a glue end. And so there's really no reason to have a trigger hanger. It just causes interference issues in a lot of stocks actually to have the trigger hanger. So we, on customer request and on our own looking at what these actions are going into stock wise, it just seemed pointless to use a trigger hanger on this one. So it's just a standard pin trigger like, other Remington 700 clones.
The trigger hangers are awesome in bench guns, but on the, like even just getting them to fit in all the different chassis and sometimes having to even cut clearances to get them to fit in there. Now, I don't want to keep you too long because I'm going to bring you back for part 2, but the last thing I want to touch base on, because we can talk about this for hours, and it's Monday. No recessed bolt nose. I would like you to give your opinion of it. I actually really like that. Why did you decide to go with no recessed bolt nose?
So anybody that's familiar with Remington pattern actions is familiar with the recessed bolt style bolt nose. And Remington developed that as a safety feature that was a big marketing deal way back when they developed the Model 700.
3 rings of steel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they developed their extractor system around that as well. That little goofy little circle with a tinny piece of metal sticking out to extract your cases. Yeah, obviously it is a safe system having that up there with their extractor. But as soon as you start using M16 pattern extractors and Seiko pattern extractors, the benefits of that basically are negated. It can help hold the extractor in position in an extreme failure case or situation. However, in my own testing of blowing up actions intentionally and seeing a few that customers have managed to blow up over the last 20 years, I've never seen an extractor leave one of our actions. And a lot of that is not, you can't say that about all actions because a lot of it has to do with the way that the internal dimensions are configured in the action, whether or not those parts can get out. So yes, I see no disadvantage of a flat-faced bolt, and it makes it really easy for the gunsmith. The TR, we ended up doing the counterbore bolt nose Remington 700 pattern only due to customer feedback when we made the first batch. The first batch was flat-faced, and we had some guys that were feeding 6BRs, and they said, they feed better if you make it a stepped bolt. I personally could never prove that, but we went ahead and made the change at that time and just stayed with it. The beauty of what we did with the TR is that bolt is actually exactly the same as far as the headspace and the distance to the end of the bolt as any of our other models in a short action, like the Bumblebee, the VR, the TR, and this Hammerhead all have the same headspace and the same distance to bolt nose. The only difference is on the TR, the first part of the lug is cut away to allow you to do a recessed bolt nose or bolt barrel. That's what you wanted to call it, a counterbore barrel.
Right. There we go.
So you can screw a flat face barrel for a VR or the Hammerhead or the Vampire onto a TR. Just the standard print. It's on our website. Onto that action with the recessed bolt style, bolt, and it's perfectly fine. You don't have to have the recess on a TR if you don't want to use it.
Yeah, you can do either or.
Does that make any sense? That's kind of confusing, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I like it too. It's just less like the countersunk bolt nose or the bolt nose that's cut into the barrel where the chamber is. For me, that's just a place for dirt, debris, grease, and everything else to get into there. It's hard to get out. It's hard to clean. Just another place for garbage to get to. And I like the flat bolt face. It's just, you get in there, you can wipe everything out nice and clean, and you don't have the bolt going into that counterbore. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it's just simpler and cleaner. I think it's a better choice the whole way around. With the Hammerhead coming out, so you just released it at SHOT Show, is that correct? Or when did she actually go on market?
Yeah. Started shipping them, I think, right after SHOT Show we started shipping the first batch. First batch is all sold, and they're all back ordered again, of course. Standard procedure around here.
That's not a bad thing, right? If you got a line, that means somebody's wanting to purchase them. And then you have a couple other retailers that can purchase them as well. Who's all handling the sale of the Hammerheads if somebody wants to look at one or talk to people about ordering them?
Yeah, so Unknown Munitions was the big push behind this, and they put a bunch of money into marketing it, and so they are the major reseller of them. But obviously Wolf Precision is another source for them. Right now, I would say that's your two best bets.
We're going to do a video review on it. It's nice to see, like, what's just a beautiful thing is to take the receivers from all those years ago with the VRs and HRs and all the changes. Like, some people sit on their laurels and just ride out a good thing, right? It's sort of an easy thing to do. And it's still, here you are, like 20 years later, still thinking outside the box and innovating and trying to think ways to make the product even better. I think that goes a long ways. And you look at this action up close, and I think you'll see it for sure. I mean, I was really blown away about the detail in it.
One thing I'll go back to when you're talking about lugs, both contacting, and there's a lot of, because we come from a bench rest world and because our actions have historically been very tight, close fitting, there was been a lot of resistance early on for people to adopt them just because of they're worried about in field conditions of there not being enough clearance for dirt. That's proven to not be. I mean, obviously we did give them more clearance. You've got 3,000 clearance instead of 1,000 clearance, which is, significantly more, but that still not a lot. But what we've found and what all the shooters that have adopted these actions and Jamie himself is dirt is not an issue. And two reasons for it. One is the flutes. The flutes on the bolt provide a place for the dirt to go. And two, the actions are all nitrided. They're hard nitrided. That means that, first of all, you really don't need any lube on the bolt. Maybe a dab on the backs of the lugs. So you have less tendency for them to pick up stuff. But just the hardness of the hard nitride process on the surface of the bolt and the surface of the receiver just makes it so the dirt doesn't dig into the receiver and become a galling point or whatever you want to say it. It just wipes off as you cycle the bolt instead of digging into it and getting stuck in the actual steel surfaces. Yeah,
it doesn't create that tack. Like, I know in 2012, I spent 3 days on a mountain in West Virginia, and I ended up taking the first, we called it the back tactical back then, but it was serial number 001, 3 days, rain, out of barns. I mean, it was a full-on 3-day field match. I ended up winning the match with the prototype, and some of it was really high-speed shooting. And so I think a lot of people misunderstand that sometimes even when you loosen them too much, then the bolt kicks sideways and the bolt bore race plane drags. Stainless on stainless is not good at all. And then you get people that Cerakote either their bolt or the receiver getting that stuff in there, which is really sticky and then takes up a lot of space. So when we teach people to like wipe the bolts down, wipe them all down, we clean them all up, a little bit of lube on the back of lugs and where we're going to have the camming action for the extraction. If you want to put a little bit of oil on the bolt, but wipe it sort of dry. They don't need to be run wet. And that's that hardening process you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not an issue as far as the way the bolt fit is and the way they operate in tough conditions.
There's a lot of people that have opinions about this that have never touched a bat, or like here at the shooting school, we'll have guys come through that have never seen a bat. A lot of your hunting community, or you mean, unless you know somebody that has one, it's not like Ruger setting in every gun store for you to play with. So they're pretty expensive, high quality receivers. But you get their hands in one for 3 days, and we never make the school here a sales pitch for rifles, ever. We don't, probably bad marketing on our part, but we let them sell themselves, right? But we don't want to, we have a captive audience, so we don't want to pound on them that they have to buy rifles and they have to do this. But all you got to do is give them the rifles and let them shoot for 3 days. The rifles are extremely accurate. They run the actions for 3 days and they'll be like, they'll go back home and they'll break open their Ruger, or they'll break open whatever action they're running, and there's no comparison. And I always say that once you get a bad action, it's hard to go back and shoot anything else. It really is. They sell themselves for that reason.
Yeah, that's true.
So, any updates or anything that you wanted to share, or anything going on new out you guys' way?
Oh, not really. Just we are working on a new long-range bench rest action, but ELR focused.
So the king of 2 mile, 3 mile stuff?
Yeah, a lot of guys have been shooting our big EX and EXS actions and that extreme long-range stuff, but they've discovered that the 50 BMG is not really the ideal cartridge for that game.
No.
So the Shytac case head size has kind of become dominant, and so we are making a receiver that is in between our big EX, EXS bolt diameter and our standard up to 338 Lapua case head diameter bolt. So we're discontinuing our Model L, and the new action is a Model XL. And yeah, it should be a really, really good platform. We've had quite a bit of input on it, and we're making parts right now, but it'll probably be a few months yet before those start shipping, building, tooling, and fixturing as we're going. So,
and you guys have been dominating that sport actually for quite a while as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Well, the other quick thing on the Hammerhead, just to throw it out there, though, it still has the interchangeable bolt, so you can change calibers. So you can go from 223, 308 to a 6.5 PRC if you'd like. Built-in pick rail, built-in recoil lug, all the things, and they all come standard salt bath nitrided or coated, so they're not coming raw or anything where anybody has to worry about Cerakoting them or sending them away for any treatment.
Well, the other thing that we did on the receiver body is we've classically used 17.4 stainless for the majority of our receivers, and we. On this one, Benzit, all of them, it's not an option to have salt bath nitride, and all of them are salt bath nitride. There's really no reason to use 17.4 stainless. And we have found that although it's a very minute amount, we get more consistent distortion in machining of the 4140 versus the 17.4. What that means to us is we're able to just make a better receiver, because you cannot, all the material 17.4, 4140 is hardened before we start machining on it to minimize any heat treat distortion, but you cannot eliminate machining distortion. In other words, there's always stress put into any piece of steel when you start cutting on it. And the 4140, and we've just kind of learning this by experience, is that as we've been doing that igniter line of actions that are made out of 4140 receiver bodies, that we have noticed that we get a little bit more consistent lot to lot or heat to heat of steel on our distortion And the 17.4 seems a little more inconsistent as we go through the different heats of steel. So we decided there was no disadvantage on this action of using the chromoly and nitride as far as corrosion resistance, et cetera. And we felt like we gained a little bit as far as the overall precision of the final product.
We're going to do a video review. We're probably going to record that this week. It may go up for those that are listening. Really try to get in close and share with you a lot of the little things that Bruce is talking about. But I really wanted to take the time to invite Bruce on and talk a little bit about it. Super excited. We got our first 5 here. Trying to decide on what chassis and everything to put it in to go out and build a new rifle. I keep trying to sell it as well. It's part of the game of sometimes you have too many rifles in the safe, but try to explain to the boss on why we need another rifle in the safe. But this is definitely going in one. I'm just having a little fatigue on what stock to put it in, but can't wait to get out and shoot it a little bit. So we'll invite you back on and talk a little bit more about the Hammerhead and then some of your experiences. I think we were going to talk a little bit about the 22 ARC. We've been chit-chatting a little bit about calibers and some of the different selections and maybe the history of the ARC.
I haven't got a chance to build that yet. I got a bunch of parts and reamers, but I haven't built it yet.
Well, I got to get you out a 22 Creed barrel as well. I have a one that's promised to come out. It's going to be playing around. But the 22 ARC's one, I think it's worthwhile to come back. And if you build it where it was based, like its parent case, it's going to be interesting to see what this cartridge really does.
In the world where it's coming from, where the Hornady, they're telling you it's coming from the Grendel, which is 220 Russian originally, and I look at it from a Venturous side. Well, it's just nothing more than a modified 22 PPC.
Yeah.
So,
which is legendary for accuracy.
Yeah, well, the 6 PPC is the one that holds 99% of everything nowadays, but
yeah. Well, the
PPC 22
case.
PPC was a good cartridge as well. The thing that I think is neat about the 22 ARC is that if you shoot all these high BC VLD type bullets have a restriction on velocity. You can only send them out the barrel so fast because the twist rate they require is hard on bullet jackets.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you shoot those heavier bullets out of the Creedmoor and you can push them faster than they actually maybe should be going in some of the different bullet configurations, depending on jacket construction. Where the 22 ARC just kind of gets you down into the powder capacity, bullet diameter ratio, et cetera, of something like a 6-dasher, 6BR. So you're kind of optimizing that powder volume needed to actually push the bullet at the speeds that it can actually be pushed without, blowing it up and
pushing it too
hard.
Yeah, the rotations per minute, I think on the 22 Creedmoor, some of the guys would complain that it's almost, 330,000 RPMs with a 1 in 7 twist or something, and you exceed that in different bullet designs, the bullets will just come apart in the air.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is relevant to this conversation or not, but way back in the day when I first started trying to shoot little 1,000-yard Venturous, everybody, especially gunsmiths and people that do their own barrel work, they're more prone to do wildcats. And so I was like, I'll reinvent the wheel here. So I built a 6mm Remington Ackley and was shooting 115 VLDs. They had just come out in a 7 twist.
Oh,
and I was getting some pretty impressive velocities out of that thing. And it was shooting really well. Second match I went to, I think I got 5 shots on paper in a 10-shot match. And then the guys were like, they're readying back to the pits guys are readying back to the guys behind the line. It's like, his bullets aren't hitting the paper anymore. What'd he do? Well, after the match was over, went back up there and got somebody to stand behind me, a spotting scope, and the bullets were blowing up about 700 yards out.
Coming apart. Yo.
So So I give the barrel like a really thorough clean, JB bore clean, and I could get about another 15, 20 rounds, and then it'd start coming apart again. So just a little bit of throat roughness, or carbon buildup in the throat, and they couldn't hack the twist rate anymore. So that was a 25-year ago lesson to me that you can only push things so far. And then you're on the edge, and then being on the edge is not a good place to be when you're trying to be competitive.
No, I mean, you got all these advantages, but man, the stuff that can happen out of the blink of an eye. And for those that have never seen a bullet come apart in front of a barrel, it's actually amazing to watch. Looks like a little hand grenade just going poof as it just disintegrates.
Well, close enough. I've never had one that was close enough to me to see it well. It's always been further down range, but yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to see. They have their own. We had a customer build a 22 Creed. Wasn't ours, and he had won. He'd been through our shooting school, so he won some match where he got a barreled action or something like that, and he opted for the 22 Creed. And I'm not even sure what the combination was of what the barrel was, how the throat was cut. Did it have burrs in it? But he literally was calling me up right after he got the rifle and asking me, because we had been shooting him for about 2 years, a year and a half. And his bullets are already blowing up, and he was running fast, but I'm not sure, like you said, it could be carbon, it could be maybe the brand of barrel he chose, but he never did solve the problem. He ended up rebarreling it. And we've never, thank God, had that problem here, and we coat our bullets with HB and other things, but it's not a fun thing to happen, especially if you're counting that gun to go and shoot for a while.
Yeah, and that particular barrel that I had that happen with happened to be one of a 3-groove barrel, which I think did not help the situation.
Yeah.
Because the lands were pretty wide in ratio to the groove. And so I think they were harder on the jacket than a 4 or 6 groove barrel would have been. But still, the twist rate is ultimately what really tears them apart. Twist rate with high velocity.
Oh, that centrifugal force has got to be incredible. It's amazing they can even hold together the way that they are. I'm twisting them up that fast. Bruce, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. We're going to bring you back in and maybe start talking some 22 cows and some varmint hunting. I think that would be pretty cool. And maybe try to do a little comparison of where the arc falls once you get one built there, and maybe with the 22 Creed as well, if you get a chance to play around with it. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on, and really appreciate all the work that you do. And the attention to detail always plays out in the stuff that you guys do there. So the video should show it all when we get that released. Should be by the end of the week. So thanks so much for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. You have a good day.
And take care. Well, that was a pretty awesome interview, and I really appreciate Bruce taking the time out of the day to come on and talk about the new receiver. We have several here. I'm getting ready to build one on now for my personal rifle. It covers a couple different little areas that I think for some shooters would be a big deal. For other shooters, they really wouldn't. An igniter, for example, is a world-class receiver and is a great dual-purpose receiver. A double stack is a hit or miss. Some people love it. Some people could live without it. The nice part about the Hammerhead is that it actually has the option to run both. And the 75-degree bolt throw for guys that are looking to work the bolt really fast helps out a little bit. Also clears those rear. If you take a look at all of your modern scopes today with that rear eyepiece on the back of all their modern optics are getting so huge that just getting your bolt handle past it with a traditional 90-degree bolt throw can be a little bit of an issue as well. So I ought to cover a couple little things, make it a little bit sweeter, and super excited to get one into a rifle. We are going to do a video review of this receiver, and you can watch that. She'll be coming out in a couple days on our YouTube channel. And I also want to say thank you to our last sponsor. I want to say thank you to TriggerTech. They are a maker of world-class triggers. We love them here because they're easy to install, they're easy to adjust, they're safe. One screw to adjust the pull weight. I really can't make them in a bad condition. And then they make everything from the Diamond, which is a world-class competition, to right to the primary. So if you want a really nice upgrade for your rifle, for around $150, you can put a primary trigger in it. So if you want to upgrade your rifle and you want to do it with a trigger, you can stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com today. Thank you again, Bruce, for coming on and spending some time with us, chit-chatting. We are going to go back and talk about high-speed 22 calibers. The 22 ARC is going to be one that we're going to be looking at. You all know I'm a huge fan of the 22 Creedmoor, of course. I'm sending Bruce out a barrel to build one up just so he can play with it there and goof around with it and try out a couple different projects we've been playing with. So anyway, I do want to say thank you again to Bruce for taking the time to come on and share some of his insight into the receivers. just flat out stunning. I have one here on my desk here looking it over, and the attention to detail just never ceases to amaze me. And it's not normal in this industry. There's a lot of best practices. There's a lot of custom actions. You see them coming out everywhere, and price points all over the place. But when you really talk about a receiver built by the people who are some of the oldest in the industry, using some of the best tool and die trades to make a extremely accurate receiver, they're the best at what they do. And in my mind, probably the best in the world. So we're going to do a video review, try to give you some close-up of the details of some of the receivers and some of the highlights we talked about here in the podcast. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us here. You can contact us via email or just give us a ring here at Wolf Precision. Also, don't forget, just a couple quick updates. We have one slot left for our Florida class. It's kicking off in 2 weeks. So if you'd like the chance to join us at one of our remote classes, this is the only remote class for this year for the Long Range Shooting School. Also, we only have 3 slots left for the year entirety. So if you want to join us here at our in-person class, we have a couple fall slots open, and then our schools will be full for the year. So if you'd like to join us, don't hesitate. Jump over to our website, wolfprecision.net, and get registered today. And of course, thank you everybody for signing up for the online long range shooting school. We'll be posting up a new video this week. It's been going great. We're really enjoying it. We're going to put out some advanced content. And of course, the online armors course is starting to get into production. We put out a new video for that last week. We want to teach people how to build and maintain their own custom rifles. You can learn more about that at Wolf Precision. So thank you everybody for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. We really appreciate it. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.